in some of these fiction written for kids in the 50s, there was the science fiction stuff that's super cool. Some of that should be brought back and done more, although, of course, some of it's going to be maybe outdated scientifically with like some of the rockets versus some of modern space travel, space shuttle and all that. And technology's gone way beyond it. Be nice if some stuff was written in a similar way. But then people have gone to the moon already, so it's not so much of an original thing. But here, in this one, The Rocket Shadow by John Blaine. Nice little section that shows a respect for ideas. I love this part. Didn't see it coming, especially in a kid's book, so I was really impressed. But pages 1 to 2, right at the beginning, when it's establishing characterization. So I'll just say quote to start the thing. I'll just start reading it. No, yeah, I'll say quote. And then now I'll do initial quote. And then when someone's saying something, I'll say quote. And then I'll say done with quote when I'm done with the whole section. So, initial quote. Rick Brant, being tall for his age, had no trouble making the final connections on his latest invention. He screwed the bell on solidly, then stepped back to view his handiwork. The doorbell was now in an unusual position. Instead of being at waist level, it had been moved to the inside of the doorframe and placed up high. It looked fine. A stranger might have to hunt a little before he saw the push button, but he'd find it all right. Rick went inside and threw the switch that would send electricity into the gadget, and then went to collect the family. Miss Brant was in the kitchen, supervising the supper preparations for the family and for the scientists who made their home on Spindrift Island. Rick sampled the cake frosting in a nearby bowl and invited, quote, "Come out to the porch for a minute, Mom? There's something I want to show you," unquote. Mrs. Brant looked up from the roast she was seasoning, a twinkle in her eyes. Quote, "What is it now, Rick? Another invention?" Unquote. Quote, "Wait and see," unquote, he said, mysteriously. Quote, "I'll go get Dad and Barby," unquote. He hurried into the big front room that Hartson Brant used as an office. It was filled with books written in several languages, all of them on scientific subjects. One wall was covered with framed degrees, stating that Hartson William Brant was an engineer, a master of arts, a member of numerous scientific societies, and a fellow of the American Institute of Atomic Scientists. In the center of the room was a massive desk, littered now with blueprints, wiring diagrams, and stacks of paper that were covered with obscure mathematical figures. Hartson Brant, clad in an unprofessor-like slack suit and with his brown hair mussed, was scowling over an intricate equation. Rick waited until his father looked up, not wanting to break into his train of thought, unquote. Awesome. I love that respect for ideas it has for the thinking of his father. His father's just not standing there looking at something, but involved in something, and Rick appreciates that. He doesn't just bust in. It'd be like someone knowing the depth of thought and work and consciousness, imagination, ideas, values going on in, like, Abraham Lincoln when he's writing a speech. Instead of some kid breaking in, one of his kids, blah, blah, like there's nothing in the world, to the kid break in and like see his father, Abraham Lincoln, writing something and to understand what's going on, the depth, the importance. That is so freaking awesome. Something like that, so they're similar. If Abraham Lincoln is there, maybe writing the Gettysburg Address or some other great political speech, or involved in the intricacies of a law case, and the son actually understands that. Now, there's a respect for ideas, something thinking important in human life. It's a fundamental to being able to do so much else. To know that connection. It's not just stuff going on in the mind, you can forget and it doesn't matter. That's just airy-fairy fiction stuff. To know that a train of thought is important and it has material effects in the world. We can do something and it's important for our survival. to grasp that reason is a tool of survival implicitly, even if not explicitly, to know that that's what's going on. All this complex thought, all these ideas coming together, you're just focused on this one thought. To have that presented like this in a kid's book is just awesome. We need more of that. Instead of just people doing stuff and yelling at each other and not really getting deep ideas. And it can come up in different ways, you know? A daughter with the mother doing some deep thought thing, or the son with the mother, daughter with the father. It's like, I don't know if Marie Curie's dad was like that, or Maria Montessori, but probably was some influence there. Or like the Wright brothers, they learned a lot from their mother, from what I've read. It was in a kid's book. I have to do more research. One of the landmark books about the Wright brothers. The father was traveling a lot, and the mother knew more about measuring and planning and making things. And she was around more, and they learned a lot from her. But come up in all kinds of different areas, all kinds of different fields. Not just this is just one, it's just an example. This is something we could help with students too, not break into their thought, not break into each other's thought. Like it comes up in Montessori education a little bit, where someone cannot interfere with someone else working on some manipulative thing, Montessori manipulative, because they're learning something, they're thinking. We don't take it away from them. We let them think and process. There's a similar idea here. This is a story I'd recommend reading. Of course, not everybody likes 50s science fiction, kind of like young adult kid fiction. But some of this is cool just because of the respect it is for ideas and science, people. It's got some good historical value to it. Learn about different people, different time, different places. Good stuff. But this, it's like the, as I said, like Tom Swift stuff, Johnny Quest a little bit, kind of a science adventure genre. I'll put a link to some blog posts I have about this, about the author. John Blaine was a pen name for Harold Goodwin. And there's some link to stuff about him, and if these links still work, I'll have to see which ones still work and which don't. But if they don't, I should have gotten something on the website that it's a broken link. So I think all this stuff will work. But there's this short bio about Goodwin, and this interesting thing about someone who read Rick Brant stuff when he was young. And then some links to some Tom Swift stuff and all that, so one can see other things that are similar. But food for thought. We should try to do that as teachers, as parents, as adults. When we have emergencies, but it's very important to people to learn in conversations and talking to someone, go through their train of thought. Sometimes, I think you'll find a lot, if maybe you've already observed, start paying attention. A lot of times we feel like we want to say something, we blurt in, and we interrupt someone else's train of thought. We need to learn to let people speak. Realize that as social animals, we want to communicate, connect, be heard. But we should think about that and appreciate the other person more, instead of giving our opinion all the time. As ancient people say, Native Americans Chinese, we're given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. To listen twice as much as we talk. And then when we do talk, it's good. It would be good if we would think more about it and be more concise and be more careful with our words and weigh them out. And if we would learn better when we're young what it means to think before we talk. Because people say think before you talk, think about what you're going to say. Well, what the hell does that even mean? Like, okay, I thought about it a little bit. I'm fine. But it would only be learned if we learn more about writing. Write something, turn it in, have it criticized, good and bad, pro and con, given back to you, you rewrite it. That's one problem. We don't continually rewrite things like 3 to 5 to 10 times to make it better, to learn how to think better. When thinking becomes more habituated by writing, then we can speak better. It's a practice that is the responsibility of education. That's the function. That's what teachers should do. Help people think better, to help them appreciate thought better and language. So when we do talk, we can say it better. We don't want to talk and say a bunch of stuff. Or there's the thing a lot of people know, sometimes those who talk the most have the least to say. And it's not their fault so much. It's a systemic failure. People should be helping them think better, know who they are, know their thoughts, know their interests, and how to express them. It is not the function of an individual to do everything and create things ex nihilo. It's the function of adults and teachers to help them be better. So there's a systemic thing there. And of course, not every teacher knows that. We didn't think of it. They weren't taught that way. We don't know what we don't know. So we got to say it's more of a systemic thing. Some individuals in history are more responsible, but, we got to be honest about our assessing attribution. Where does a cause go? What did it? But, like it says here, Rick waited until his father looked up, not wanting to break into his train of thought, unquote. That's something we should do and appreciate. And when we read something like that, it should have emotional content. It should speak to one's heart and mind, the appreciation for something like that. Because we know how thought is important for cooking something well, for coming up with a good recipe, for cooking something with love, for doing good fitness training, thinking about a process. Like, what was her name? Forgot now. Maybe UCLA basketball coach, John Wooden, forget. I get that mixed up sometimes. But he and his coaches that worked under him and with him would, from what I've read, if I remember right, they would plan practices for hours ahead of time. What are they going to do? Why? How do they make the most use of their time? They didn't just jump in there. There was immense train of thought embodied in everything they did. Someone might be doing something, having a little practice. There was all this theory and experience. I don't know how many centuries and decades of experience in basketball and sports and fitness and learning behind this and embodied in it, just like Montessori materials. It's not just stuff they played with. It was this whole integrated system. One thing leads to another. It's a whole integrated system of education, system of training, one thing to lead into another, like doing something to lead to writing, to lead to reading. But expressing your own thought, you're right, then you can appreciate reading better, things like that. So there is some food for thought. We can try to instill in ourselves so we can instill in youth so they can think better to live better. Peace.